All right, Hotep, Black Power, right back again, in peace. I'm doing this. It's called clarity because I'm clearing up some misconceptions. I guess it was a good thing for me to shut it down and do it again. Um, for the simple fact that this clarity is based on the constant asking of, am I, are you down with the petition being signed for your father to be released? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And the reality is, I was very much so getting petitions signed. I had about 200 petitions signed off the strength of just me being his son. People just wanted to support my dad, and something that my sister Leah posted that made a lot of sense. Was the stipulations that go with the pardon. And this is to Nuwaupians, non-Nuwaupians, whoever. And I'm gonna stay on for a good while, just to people come on with questions, or even after that. I have no problem answering them because I don't run from anybody. If you got something to say, just go out and say it. But what I'm gonna say is this: when I did my own research on it, I realized how much people are going to look at the pardon or the request for a pardon. And the main thing I also looked at is the pardons that's granted. The pardons that's granted are usually drug offenses. None of them have been for sex crimes. My father pled out to a sex crime, several situations that were counts of, aggravated child molestation, and his final conviction was transporting kids across state line for the purpose of having sex under the RICO Act. The thing is that what Nuwaupians have to do is you have to research cases where they were granted a pardon for those that were under sex crimes and under RICO, or either or, because RICO is not just not just under one thing; it's under several things, not just under my father's case. The thing is, usually when I notice when the Nuwaupians do research for things, it's usually it goes under the Dr. York favor as opposed to just doing research. But the reality is that Obama has pardoned a lot of people within the last several months. None of them have been for sex crimes. All of them have been for drug offenses. Now, reason why I keep saying sex crimes is because he pled out to certain charges. That is a reality. You can't run away from that. You can't keep changing it to say this or to say that. This is public record, okay? Because if it wasn't going to be a plea out, then it was going to be a conviction. Okay, so he had to plea out, and part of it was from my own research. People want to throw in the Catholic, they want to throw in the Nestle, they want to throw in the Kadisha, but they were already let go prior to the plea. That's the reality. That's in the case. I'm not with the pardon anymore. You can burn me at the stake. You can say whatever you want to about me. I really don't care. The reason why is because a pardon is an admittance of guilt. When you're asking someone to pardon you, you're asking for someone to pardon the situation or pardon basically your crime. And I always go back to John Forte's pardon, the producer, and the hip hop producer or music producer. Period. He was guilty of trafficking cocaine, and he did, and he for federal crime. He did it, and so Bush pardoned him for his crimes. And the funny thing is, people forget that again, you have to do research on crimes that have been pardoned, that have been non-drug offenses, and those that have been under certain, just under RICO. RICO crimes don't get pardoned like that. That's reality. The next thing you have to worry about is, what's funny is that in the case, Nuwaupians, I'm talking about during the case that he was in back in 2004, his advisor, legal advisor, other than, Rick or, the lawyer that he had at the time, they didn't want him to take a certain plea, but that plea would have allowed him to no longer be in prison at that time. The plea itself was really something that Garland, the lawyer that he had at that time, was setting up for him to go to another country and just excommunicate himself away from Nuwaupians. The Nuwaupians that surrounded him at that time did not want him to do that. That was a plea that was set up for him at that time. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because it would just be based on a perception and not a reality that he would plea out, okay, look, I'll take this plea and I'll get out the country. Okay? You can look this up as public record. And he rejected the plea. He was advised to reject that plea. Okay? That was his decision to go along with what other people told him to do, but it was a bad decision because in hindsight, you have to look at it like this. If he would have went with it, he wouldn't be in prison now. We wouldn't have to worry about what we're doing, which is trying to convince someone to pardon him. You know what I'm saying? Like you're in a situation where that would have probably been his best opportunity just out of prison, where he gets sent to another country and he does a certain amount of years. When he was going to be convicted, it was going to be in Marion, Ohio, and they were going to send him after that amount of time. I think it was going to be 5 to 6 years. I think the last thing I heard was 4. But it wasn't going to be a full 135 years in prison. But it was going to be enough time, and then he does that, and he gets sent to another country. But we're not going to have to, we wouldn't have to be spinning our wheels with all these gimmicks that we've had to do from, I've been involved in so many gimmicks to get my father out of prison. It's a shame, and it's sickening. From the Liberian thing, which was never going to work, from the Ghana thing where he had to change where he was born at to suit this and to suit that. And after a while, with just letters from him back and forth, I was like, hey, whatever you feel you need to do to get yourself out, go ahead and do it. I mean, and that was just my correspondence with my dad. It was like, I'm looking at letters and he's saying, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. Because he came to me and told me that, look, we're going to go with Peace, Afi, Black Power. That we were going to go with the try to get in touch with Attorney General Eric Holder. And that's the reason why in a post I did several months ago, when I talked about Eric Holder, Nuwaupians came on there and they cocked the attitude and wanted to get all crazy with me, which is ridiculous because stop coming at people that know more than you do about certain subjects. It makes you look very stupid. And that's what's so dumb. Because when I post things, I'm posting something that I actually know information about. I don't just post things just for the sake of posting. Because I've realized a lot of people that are in the Nuwaupian Nation that have been around for a long time are very ignorant to certain things that went on. There's certain things that I was privileged to know about just through letters from him. Because at first he didn't really want to do the whole pardon thing because he knew what the pardon meant. But he was being convinced to do so as like the last gasp to get him out. Because it's just certain people he knew around him that it was like, this is nothing has worked. So we're going to go this direction. And so when he went with the idea back in 2009 with the pardon, I was like, well, I mean, if, the whole thing was basically a thesis that was supposed to be written to address Eric Holder, and one of the backdrops for this was the Mr. Behind Closed Doors documentary. And I'm not sure who's doing what now, but the way things are being presented in terms of a thesis statement, because if you're gonna present something to someone like this, which is supposed to release a man under federal charges for all these type of things that they have him under, you better put your stuff together, man. You can't half-ass what I'm seeing now online. It's half-ass bullshit from Victoria and from Mario. And I can give a shit what you think about what I say. But every time I see something about them, or every time I look at videos, it's not seriousness. It's like even when we did the DC trip, and we went all the way out to DC, and we went out there, and this was back in 2010. I remember this. I didn't go because I was like, y'all bullshitting. Went all the way out there, rather than talking to new people, you're talking to Nuwaupians. You get on the lawn in DC, and you do this whole demonstration just to take pictures and show pops that you're doing it, which is really just like photo opting. And to me, you're being disrespectful of the situation. If you really was serious, because we were talking about this back, I remember when the whole pardon thing was being talked about 5 or 6 years ago, and we were like, okay, so when is a thesis going to be made? When are you going to make a thesis? When are you going to actually create something to present to Eric Holder? This is the U.S. government. This is not some backwards jail in, Edenton, Georgia, or Cobb County. You're half-assing it, and so we're going back to half-assing things, and it's like, peace out. And what's the point of half-assing something if you're trying to get a man that's 71 years old out of prison, that when you look at court documents now, they're denying his medical release because they don't believe he has angioedema. So the sense of urgency with this and the seriousness with what you're trying to do doesn't make sense at this point. It's not, and I mean, seriously, I really don't feel it's going to work. And I'm also seeing posts where people are talking about trying to get Donald Trump. I'm like, if Obama's not going to pardon him, do you really think Donald Trump's going to pardon my father? Y'all have lost your mind, man. Like, y'all are just like throwing things on the wall to make it stick like spaghetti. Like a noodle on the wall. Hopefully it's sticking, it won't fall down. And then when someone says the shit not going to work, then you want to sit there and cock a little attitude. Don't cock no attitude with me. I don't play games like that. Because I do, and I've sat here and I researched the whole thing in terms of a pardon. Again, a pardon is when you are saying, I did what I did, and I want to be let out. That's exactly what a pardon is. Because again, put yourself in the situation. If you were a part of a government that is supposed to look up a man's case who was being convicted of what they were convicting him of and what he was pleading out to, would you pardon this man? You have to ask yourself that. If I'm looking at it, if I'm Eric Holder, because the way it's set up now, Attorney General Eric Holder doesn't even have the power he used to anymore, because Trump has brought in his whole candidate. I mean, his under his brain, his own cabinet. If I'm Eric Holder, let's just say Eric Holder is still there. If I'm Eric Holder right now, and I'm going under Malachi York or Dwight York or whatever name they have him under, this Dwight York, and I'm looking at the former case that was in 2004, and I look at everything that was in that case, even if it's just testimonies that were false. Let's just say the testimonies were all false, from 53 testimonies down to 13. Let's just say every one of them was a lie. Do you really think that's not going to influence me to say, nah, you know what I'm saying? Nah, I don't think I'm going to roll with that. What do you say? No, I wouldn't say that's crazy, Jeff. I don't get it. Again, what I'm saying is this. Because the thing is, what we got to stop doing is getting emotional. You can't look at things from an emotional standpoint. And that's the thing that we do too much in these situations. If we look at things from the emotional standpoint, it's like, well, if he's not going to support it, then F him. I'm like, okay, I can care less. But again, you gotta ask yourself that. You're asking a government to look into a case that on the surface, a lot of people now in the conscious community aren't even supporting anymore. And if we're getting to the point where, in terms of people who 10 years ago was full support, even after the conviction of my father, they were still doing that. You wouldn't say they're crazy to do. You said, Jeff Ware, you said that it wouldn't be crazy to do the pardon? I'm trying to understand where you're coming from because you're confusing me. I feel like I have to keep repeating myself. But let me say this again. You're asking, unless you're admitting to yourself that what my father was accused of is true, that's what the pardon entails. That's like if I did trafficking of drugs, I keep repeating this again. I'm gonna stay online for a minute in case people, when I have questions, I have something to say. Because after this is done, I'm not even talking about this anymore. Because I see how people are silly. And another thing, please do not spam my inbox with sign a petition, sign a petition, sign a petition. Do not do that. The moment I see someone throw that in my inbox, I am blocking you. Don't do that no more. Okay? What that's saying is if you feel, and I'm going to say this, if you feel that if he didn't do it, why say yes? I did it. Let me get a pardon. Yeah, exactly. If you didn't do it, why are you? That's the thing. Like if you, again, I'm citing someone. When I cited, that was a good point, Jeff. When I brought up, what's the brother? John Forte. When I brought up John Forte, I brought up John Forte for a reason. Because John Forte was trafficking drugs. So when Bush, remember, it was funny because when Bush gave him the pardon, he was reluctant. It was like, damn, John was, because I remember when John was convicted. Because, John was one of the people who was in charge of the production of the Fugees album, The Score. A lot of people remember him from the Score album. And when he trafficked cocaine, he got caught and he had to do that time. And so when his name came up, it was like, okay, this is non-violent crime. What's the point of keeping him in there that long? It'd be no point in doing so. And so that's the thing. What you're saying is, if you're a Nuwaupian, what you're saying to yourself is, you have to ask yourself, is this something I want to do? Because again, the pardon, the plea that he had back in 2004, they didn't want to do it because of perception. They didn't want to be perceived. They didn't want him to be perceived, of course, as a child molester. So they were like, nah, don't do that plea. And really subsequently, Garland, which was his first lawyer, was like, oh, okay, well, you're going to listen to them over the man that you're paying. What's the point? You're going to listen to people who don't have a degree in law than a man who's been doing law for like the past 40 years. That's the problem. Again, this is for anybody. If people want to look back at this and say, I really don't, hey, this is me giving clarity to certain things. Two specific things. I don't support it. If you want to go under the pardon and support the pardon, you can do whatever you want to do. I don't support it anymore. He's supporting it now, and I could see why he's supporting it, because he has no other option. Ghana was destroyed. It's sad because he had to lie about where he was from for the Ghana situation. It was sad with the Liberian situation. There's so many things that go on that people are not privileged to know about. And that's what's so sad, is that a lot of y'all think if he was pardoned, the admission of guilt would open him up to civil lawsuits that would exactly. That's the thing. That's why it's not a smart idea to do this. Because again, okay, let's say you get pardoned. Immediately what's going to happen is you're going to be banned. You're going to have sex crimes all over your name. I mean, it's already there anyway. So it's a lot that is attached to my dad already. And the pardon thing is like, basically, when you're going out, I'm just saying, as if you're a Nuwaupian, if you're going out and you're saying, sign this petition for a pardon, a person with a brain and thinks logically is going to look at that and say, so you're saying Dr. York did it? Is that what you're saying? then you have to answer that question. Just remember that when you jump down my sister Leah's throat, and you jump down my throat, or you jump down the sister KT's fault, those that don't support it, which is a lot of people that don't, that just are like, I'm backing away from that. Personally, people ask me, well, what would you have done? I mean, what do you feel was the best option? I feel that the plea that he had set up, where he was going to probably do for, I think, maybe 4 to 10 years. Excuse me, I remember now it was 4 to 10 years, and he was going to have to move to another country. The problem is Nuwaupians at that time did not want him to leave. They didn't want him, they wanted to continue to have direct contact with my dad. And that was just some selfish bullshit, truthfully. Because even in 2005, there was enough books that he wrote. What else did you want him for? You know what I'm saying? Like, just leave the man alone and let him do what he needs to do. Let him live in another country. Because the whole part of the plea was, to disconnect himself from Nuwaupians and everybody else. My thing is, as long as he's alive, as long as he can, whatever he wants to do in another country, if he wanted to keep teaching or keep writing, it was his business. But now you're sitting in Florence, Colorado, in the same prison as a Unabomber, and it's like, you haven't even, what's the point? You know what I'm saying? Now we have to sit around and gasp for these, pardons and all this stuff, which I don't support it. Please do not. And I've seen people that have friended me just to get me to sign. I'm like, I got 200 signatures just by myself. Don't send that to me, and do not throw me in any more groups supporting it. Don't do that. It's very disrespectful. Again, I just told you the reason why I do not support it. I don't support it. Okay? And there's a video of my brother Faisal confessing to what happened to him in terms of sexual assault. And I'm talking about an asshole our community as a child. I mean, he's my younger brother. And he's saying, okay, it didn't happen by Dr. York, which that's real. I mean, if it didn't happen by him, then it happened by somebody else, then okay. But what that's saying is that he's still negligent because it happened on his watch. So we have to be very careful about the things that we confess to. We look at it and be like, okay, that's gonna work. So that's gonna exonerate his name. I'm like, no, it doesn't. He might think you're doing something for the master teacher when you're really making him look bad. You know what I'm saying? It's stuff that we do. We don't think when we do it. We think we're doing the right thing. We're thinking we're helping out the master teacher, but that's almost like making it look like a Jerry Sandusky situation where everybody knew about something, but nobody said anything. I mean, and that's pretty. It's almost like that's become the norm for black people, and that's been the norm for black people since slavery ended, since the black church began, where molestation was going on from the slave master, and it's like, hold on, before I even finish my statement. This is from Jeff Ware. When it comes to if they do give the master teacher a pardon, would have to register or not. Well, I mean, where can he register? That's the question. He's banned from everywhere in Georgia. He would be banned all over the place, so he would have to go to another country. You would never see him again anyway. You would never see him again anyway. The whole point is, let's just say the pardon works, right? Let's just say, I'm creating a scenario here. Let's say that it goes through all the officials and they say, okay, this is going to work. Okay, and then it goes to Obama. Obama looks at it, and he always looks at the Mystery Behind Closed Doors, which is a great documentary, by the way. And he says, all right, let him go. He would have to. He wouldn't be able to be here anymore. He can't stay in America. Because again, the stipulations to a pardon is not just saying, get me out of here. A pardon is saying, I did everything that I said that I pled to, and everything that's in that case, yes, I did it. But I feel I did my time. I did enough time for these crimes, so just let me out. That's what he's saying. I'm trying to understand why people are not getting this, because that's the situation. The definition of what a pardon is. Excuse me. Pardon me. Pardon me. Excuse me. That's what I'm saying. So again, going back to that, we're talking about pedophilia. That's something that we've had to deal with, and we played the hush game for so long that it's like we got to cut that shit out. We have to cut that shit out, man. We do. And I really, this is the thing. If it seems like now, and I'm keeping it on subject, because I see every time I turn around, I see a Nuwaupian, they take the picture with the because as a matter of fact, I think this was from Victoria. She had an article. This is, I think, maybe 2 or 3 days ago. I read this article where the guy that wrote the article about my father was, it wasn't a very good article. I mean, it was a terrible article. I mean, when I say terrible, I mean it made him look bad. Made him look like a cult leader. It made him look like he molested. It's like, yeah, wow, that's wrong, Jeff Ware. It's very wrong. It's like we're trying to, whoever this lawyer he has is, and I've looked at videos of her. She's not very competent. I'm sorry. You feel that's wrong. He supports her. Of course he's going to support her. He has nothing left. I would support her too if I had nobody else myself. Who else would I? What other option does my father have? Look at things in terms of common sense. What other option does he have? That's the point. So he has to go whatever he has to go with. See, the difference between, let's say, for example, Yahweh bin Yahweh, he racketeering. He served what? I think 10 years for racketeering. He gets out, he dies. That's it for him. And it's crazy, man. People ask me, what can I do? I'm just letting you know. I've done at least 5 or 6 radio interviews from 2006 to help get him out. I can name them. I mean, you can. Magazine interviews. I did one with Vibe magazine that was never published with a white boy named Black Devil. No, White Devil. White Devil. Oh man, Public Access. Worked on the 2255, the conflict of interest, which was a really good concept. I think. I'm not sure what happened with that. We all thought that was going to work, and it didn't work, and that was very disappointing, because that hurt, because I made the tape. I recorded the tape for it in terms of Abby Eli and everything and his situation. But it's crazy, because it's like we keep finding as the Nuwaupian Nation. It's like we keep saying we. I'm not in that. I'm not in the Nuwaupian Nation no more. For real, I'm not. Don't care if you don't like it. I don't care. But the reality is, every time we turn around, there's like a new gimmick that happens, and as his child, I mean, he has 150 brothers, 150 kids. I'm one of them. I'm just one of his children. That is like, it's sad to see every time we turn around, there's a new gimmick coming out that's saying, we gotta do this, and it's like, okay, did you even research what you're telling me to do? And you know what I'm saying? Like, before you run around trying to bully people to sign stuff, why not read the stipulations behind the pardon? I'm just using logic here. Again, this is the final time I'm going to say this. A pardon, and I said this before, a pardon is an admittance of guilt, and you are asking the people who are going to pardon you to let you out, and you are accepting the crimes that you did. It's not, I didn't do it, but let me out. It don't work like that. It's like parole. It's almost like, it's the same thing. It's like, are you generally, apologetic with what you did? Because you got to realize, see, a lot of y'all was not around at the time of May 8th. I was around at that time, and I remember during the hearings, they consider my father to be a flight risk. So all this is public record. So imagine I go back and I'm looking at Malachi York or Dwight York or whatever name, and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, shit, this dude was considered to be a flight risk. You know, I'm like, yeah, I feel it's a lot. You know, they considered, you know, I remember everything that we brought into the situation, everything that Garland, his first lawyer, brought into the hearings was motion denied, motion denied, motion denied. So when he went into the trial, he was facing 1,000 years in prison. And I realized child molestation, this is one thing that really needs to be said. I remember talking to Garland when he was interviewing everybody on the land at the time. This is his lawyer. He said, I realized something. Child molestation does not have to have physical evidence in order to convict somebody. All I have to do is say you did something to me. You know what I'm saying? I got you. And see, that's the problem, is that we're not thinking in terms of that. The problem is also, if I'm looking at something, I'm trying to get people to see something from a perspective. See, because a lot of Nuwaupians have a tunnel vision when they look at things. They only see it from the Nuwaupian standpoint, but you have to look at it from the standpoint of the person who has to review the case. They're not only going to look at his medical condition, and it's tearing me up now, how I'm talking about it and I'm thinking about it and it's fucking me up. It's my father. Man is 71 years old and he's dying in prison and they don't even recognize his medical condition. Personally, I feel if someone were to ask me this, because they've been asking me this as well, what would you have done? What do you feel would have been the best option to get him out? I feel a 2255 would have been the best option because it was a conflict of interest. Judge C. Ashley Royal was presiding over the same case in terms of Abby Eli. That was his death. You know, the negligence of the doctor. He knew he was a Nuwaupian. Next thing you know, he's the judge over my father's case, and he took the case. So it's like he knew what he was doing. You know, peace to you, Al. So that's the situation. Again, I don't support it. People have asked me, what do I think of it? I don't support it. Personally, it doesn't make sense. Again, if you feel my father didn't do something and you're running with he is innocent, why would you ask for a pardon? If you knew what the pardon represented and what the definition of a pardon was, then you wouldn't support it yourself. I understand that we all want him out. Now, if it's just like, fuck it, if it's like a fuck it attitude, fuck it. You know, just say what you said and just get him out. I can only look at things from a logical standpoint. Either way, it doesn't look good, truthfully. And the other, I would say a medical transfer. The thing is that when you look at recent documents now that's being put out in terms of the denial, a lot of Nuwaupians have not seen these documents. It's actually online. And I'm just going to break it down in layman's terms. The recent document is basically saying that we don't believe that he has angioedema. We don't believe he has a critical illness. We feel like he's faking it. I feel, and I'm realizing that, and I'm like, but that's the thing, though. If this is something that this is my point, though. Afi, is like, if you're trying to propagate something to people, this is what you want people to sign their name on. Wouldn't you do the research to find out exactly what it is? Someone who thinks logically is going to say, okay, this is what you want. All right. But at the same time, that's the thing. People are looking at that and they're saying, so y'all are coming out saying that he did it. When you're asking for a pardon, that's what you're saying. You can't get around that. You can not like what I'm saying. You can get mad. It doesn't change the definition of a pardon. It is what it is. So I'm here for questions. Do not run off of this and inbox me a question that you could have asked me here. I'm sure, of course, it's late. It's 11:35 at night. So most people will probably sleep. Most Nuwaupians are probably not trolling right now. Which, like, whatever, man. But seriously, I'm just giving you a definition of what something is. And I'm sure I'm going to get comments from this tomorrow, which is, it is what it is. But again, I'm challenging you all. When you do see this, I'm challenging you to do the research on what a pardon is. Don't just run around asking people to do something not knowing that they probably know what a pardon is and you don't. That's probably why they're not going to do it. Now, you've gotten a lot of signatures signed, but just remember that this is, when you get these signed, this is what you're telling the person that's signing it. That's why I don't support it anymore, because come on. But yeah, clarity as well. Another subject that still reigns clarity, because I don't, thing is, this is the reason why I do what I do. And I talked about leadership earlier. I said leadership, circular leadership, and up and down leadership are two different things. And what we have to do as black people is be very cognizant of the failure of up and down leadership. When I talk about up and down leadership, I'm talking about one leader like Elijah Muhammad over everybody. We all be a reflection of Elijah Muhammad. And see, Jeff Ware, maybe they know what it is, but feel that's their last option. I mean, I've said that before. I'm saying, if you feel it's your last option and you're basically have the attitude of saying fuck it, okay, just accept the fact that that's what you're saying, is you're admitting to something. Then the questions will come. So, or the statements, not the questions. The questions are over. After you go through this pardon thing, the statements will be, so he is a child molester. So he did do this to transport kids across land with purpose of having sex. That's what you're going to get, Afi. They have to be pragmatic. The new attorney general will see this as in black and white. No emotion. The pardon will be not. Exactly. And see, again, I understand, like, that's why my father at the time in 2010, he really wanted the pardon done under Attorney General Eric Holder, under, Eric Holder and Barack Obama, because truthfully, that if you were going to get one, that would have been your best option. Truthfully, that would have been your best option if you want to be honest about it. But you're under the Trump administration now. That shit ain't gonna fly. Use common sense. Do you really think in the Trump administration, at this point, with everything that's going on and everything Trump does is very blatant. It's not covert. He acts, and I told people this, and this is a side note, but it's still relevant to what we're talking about, is look up his grandfather. And his grandfather was part of the Second Reich with the Nazi regime. And the Second Reich did most of the damage to the Jews and the Africans on the island of Shark Island. So someone with that type of genetics and this type of mindset, do you really think he's going to look at Malachi York and be like, yeah, let's go ahead and let him go? Are you fucking kidding me? This dude, if you really think, and some people with our people, black people are very fearful of everything. Everything is a white boogeyman. So when things go bad, we start thinking like, well, I mean, maybe this will happen this way and this happen that way. I'm like, no, he's coming. And I'm not saying that to get you to be scared. I'm just saying that just to be reality, just to deal with life as what it is in terms of Trump. But going back to the point we're talking about in terms of black people, it's like leadership. The thing is, you have to set up things where everyone has a role. I know I'm taking up a lot of time, but hey, I got time. If you want to listen to me, I'll keep going, but I'm probably another 20 minutes or so, and I'll get off. But circular leadership is something that is indicative of African tribes, but up and down leadership is also ancient as well. But we're going to have to flip the script at some point. Because what I'm noticing is black organizations failing because of ego. One person in charge, the same thing with my dad. One person in charge, everybody follows suit, and then the head gets knocked off and the body begins to crumble. And that's been going on now. Even now, you got people who are in charge, their ego takes over, and the body doesn't know what the hell to do. Because you didn't elect, you have elected delegates, but then you still have the main person in charge. And that's the sad part. And I really feel bad when I see that. I feel bad because it's like, man, we're not learning from our mistakes. And we have to learn from our mistakes if we're going to get through this situation. I feel like, personally, this is just me from my own perception, circular leadership will at some point be the best option for us in terms of black people, meaning that you pinpoint positions for your people. You know what I'm saying? You have that group. There's no, if two people get eliminated, you still have, let's say, 8 or 9 more. And from the group, you can resurrect 2 more so that you never die off. And you at least have something that you can give the people. But right now, we don't have that anymore. We don't have clear agendas. I noticed that now in terms of when we dealt with the Thanksgiving thing. I'm like, damn, these same people will kill the cracker and pumping black fist, but then when it's time to fast, and at least, see, my thing is, at least you could have taken this day to define what Thanksgiving really was to those Native Americans and be like, oh, I'm not touching that shit. But instead of doing that, you're like, I'm just going to eat my plate. Whatever. Fuck it. Then the next day you pop up and then you back to normal. See, and that's right there is what we talked about before. I say this a lot. There's no guidelines to say if this person steps out of bounds, this person is reprimanded for it. Because 90% of what black people do is based on ego. We don't deal with reality. See, when you deal with ego, you don't deal with reality. One can't exist with the other. And in order for us to truly begin to change and transform and transcend, we're going to have to let the ego go, especially us men. We haven't been doing a good job. It's time to move forward. Just become the protectors. If you can still lead, show by example that you can. If not, it's time to sit your behind down or your ass down. And I hate to, I'm just being honest. That's why I don't really deal with organizations like that no more, because the reality is every time you turn around, someone's ego goes into the stratospheric position and they just can't come down because they don't see anything that they do is wrong. And this is not indicative of a specific person or a specific group. I've seen this so many different times, and it's like all I can do is shake my damn head. It's like, damn, again. And again, this is not the last thing. Do not ask me about polite no more. My non-mind radio would not be about polite. Like last night, someone asked me about polite, so I had to deal with polite, and it's like, damn, really? So it's like, I'm laughing because it's funny, but again, actions speak louder than words. You have to make your own decision. He is his own man. Whatever he did, he has to deal with that. We have to be able to accept what he did and move on. Me, I'm moving on from him. I'm not going to keep looking, and finding another reason to keep talking to this individual. And so I'm like, I'm not talking to him. I don't even talk to him like that. But just, trying to find reasons, because we, how we are. We keep making excuses for fuckery. And we got to stop doing that too. You know what I'm saying? This wasn't a negative clarity, but this is me. This is about reality. Black people are not realists. We're religious people in denial. We continue to do things based on belief and not factual information. And as long as we continue doing that, nothing's going to go right for us. We have to be able to accept when things go wrong. And I'm just one last thing before I go. That's the thing about the case with my dad. When we didn't accept when things were not working, like when a gimmick didn't work or when this idea didn't work, we didn't just say, you know what, this don't work, and we're going to move on and go somewhere else. We didn't do that. That's why every time we turn around, there was a recycled idea. It kept going back, okay, Ghana, Liberia, the medical transfer, blah, 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 blah. Not even knowing that most Nuwaupians didn't know that for like several years, the medical transfer was being denied because they were denying the fact that he had angioedema anyway. They weren't reading the documents. And a lot of these documents are public record. So I'm like, why are you not doing your research? It's beyond me. I don't understand that. Do your research. It saves a lot of time and a lot of heartache and a lot of depression. That's why I just do my research. I don't get emotional no more. I just say, well, this is what I'm going to say. I hope my father gets out and gets put to another country where he can live his life without dying in prison. That's what I ultimately hope for me, personally. Other people will feel a different way about it, but that's how I feel. I wish that would have happened when they gave him the plea option back in 2004, 2005, while it was on the table and he was advised not to do so. The thing is, we didn't want to live with the reality that we will never see him again. That was part of the plea situation. And my thing is, I felt like, look, I didn't meet my dad until I was 14 years old. So for me, it wasn't going to really hurt me as much as people who were really, 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 really attached to him. Whereas, I loved him, but it wasn't like a really big connection like it was my dad, like my mother and my grandmother. So it was like, it was what it was. But my thing was to use unselfishness and say, I'd rather him be alive than be sitting in a concrete cell. But people are worried about perception. But, hey, it is what it is. Again, if people have questions about it, I'm still here. But, I'm going to be shutting it down in a minute. And moving on. Again, I want to clarify again, what I do, I'm not trying to... A lot of things that you're going to hear from me in posts, you're going to see from posts from me, is from myself. In terms of the direction I'm going in terms of teaching and in terms of research and scholarship. They're not going to all be from my dad. I feel like I have to clarify that too. I'm not going to sit up here and be a clone of my father. That's a waste of time for me. I'm my own man, and I want to be respected as my own man. Again, I did that before where I wanted to be him. That doesn't work. There's only one Dr. York, and I didn't want to try to fill his shoes like that. And no, that's not something he really wants for his kids anyway. Like that, he didn't want a successor. He stopped thinking things like that for years. He himself, and I'm being honest with you, he didn't even believe in me in the beginning. He didn't. His whole thing in 1999, when I was 18, I wanted to be a teacher so bad. His thing was he wanted to always be it. I'm just keeping it honest with y'all. He didn't believe in me. I was 18 years old. The first class I taught on the land, he was not there. He was on the Disney trip. He wasn't there for it. He knew I was teaching, but wasn't there. And at the time, it hurt. But me being 35 years old now, it's just like, wow. So I'm not really like tripping anymore on it. But just to clarify to you all, there will be things that will be posted that will not be under the auspices of the Nuwaupian Nation. This is the last I'm going to talk about this. I realize I have to keep clarifying myself every time I say something, and it's really getting annoying. Because every time I turn around, there's an inbox, or I'm getting cursed out, or I'm being threatened by a Nuwaupian, and it's just like... What's funny is that when I had the bookstore here, I held Texas down for several years. Never got any respect for that, but then when I do something wrong or I say something that you don't like, you go on the slander campaign, which is sad because it's still indicative of black people, and we really got to get that shit together. And it's sick, because it's a religious, zealous thought process to go at somebody like you're gonna burn me at the stake like Elvira or some shit. But it's sad, but it is what it is. And really, my mentor right now really is more Steve Coakley, because he's like a master researcher, even more than a teacher. He's a master researcher. He was a very authentic person. That's why I always send people Copley lectures. Not so much my father, but Copley lectures. Because Copley was a very authentic person. And whatever he did, he did it from the heart. He wasn't trying to impress you. He brought you his research at a time when there was no internet. There was no Google, no Yahoo, no Google Scholar where you can just look up the information and boom. You had to really do research. And that's what's so deep is that we don't do real research no more. And he did it. And so for me, he's inspired me to do better research for myself, to become a better teacher for myself. So I take from him, I have my father's genetics, so a lot of things I do is like him. But the direction I'm going in terms of exposing who I'm exposing, I'm not, it's a whole different section. So those who support me with that, I've been warned. I don't think you should go that direction, But it's okay. But if no one has any questions about what I talked about earlier in terms of the pardon, or all that stuff, I'll shut it down and keep it moving, y'all.